Alrighty, we are going to jump into this. So first and foremost, thank you for joining us. And as you continue to join, or people continue to join, well, thank you ahead of time who aren't hearing it. Just want to do a quick intro on this webinar. I'll be moderating. My name is Evan Bass. We have Phoebe Jonas with us. We have Sarah Seeds with us. And we have Buzz Roddy with us. This is the unofficial Applying for Unemployment New York, New Jersey webinar version. We're going to jump through a lot of different things. I sort of run through the gauntlet of items related to applying for unemployment. Who can do it? How can you do it? The different routes, especially given the new updated bills and things that have been passing. In addition, there is a question and answer or questions, I think, part your Q&A little icon at the bottom of your Zoom. You can type in questions there, and then when the sort of presentation side of things get done, our panelists will do our best to answer all of your questions as well. So feel free to ask any questions or type them in. Without further ado, I'm going to give you over to Buzz Roddy.
Hello, everybody. I hope everybody is healthy and enduring their isolation with as much happiness as possible. Welcome. I'm just going to go over what was passed on Friday, which is the CARES Act, which stands for the Federal Corona Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. The act provides within it what's called the it's an additional unemployment provision. It's called the I just want to see the Pandemic Unemployment Act, the PUA, and there are many things about this. We're concentrating on the New York tri-state area, because it's concomitant with state's departments of labor. So the actual application of this may be slightly different depending on what state you are. This is very New York centric, what we're doing here. But the CARES Act, first of all, eliminates a wait week, which there formerly was when you're applying for unemployment. There is no waiting to start collecting your money. The start date for your claim will be from when your last job ended rather than when your claim is open. So if your last job was 2 weeks ago, your claim will start then, not today if you opened a claim. Work search requirements are pretty much suspended nationwide. That's by state. Part of the provisions of unemployment insurance are one is expected to be ready, willing, and able to work and to search for work. And since obviously there's very little work available to anybody, they've relaxed some of those requirements and proof of that. Entertainment workers have a special carve out. If you have a planned job that was coming up, and we don't know yet whether that means a signed contract or a deal memo. And all of us here today, if we don't know exactly what we're talking about, we'll tell you that because we don't want to give anybody any false information. But as it reads, and you have to forgive me because I have a few contacts in the Department of Labor, and for obvious reasons, this is all internet search, cobbling this all together. So anyway, the entertainment workers have a thing for upcoming jobs. If the job that you was canceled due to Corona, you are eligible to work that into your unemployment claim. That's as much as I know about that particular provision. You're going to get an additional 13 weeks on an unemployment claim, which means if you have a claim that you're in now, there will be an additional 13 weeks for a total of, in New York, 39 weeks. If you're starting a claim today, say, you will get the 26 weeks that you would get in New York State, plus that additional 13, a total of 39. In addition, there's an additional rate increase per claim of $600. So if you have a claim now and you're collecting $150 a week, you will have an additional $600. So that was a total of $750. The max in New York State is, don't quote me on this, I think it's 435. And so if you're getting the max, then you will get the max unemployment for New York State, 435 plus 600. So that would be 1,005, 1,035. They said there would be no math. And finally, you all know about the stimulus. This has nothing to do with unemployment, the $1,200 per person, $500 for children, but that is a separate thing from unemployment. And the only reason I wanted to bring that up is because unemployment is taxable by the Fed and by the state, and the stimulus is not. Now, the other thing that about the CARES Act that a lot of us performers are worried about is 1099 work or independent contractor work. The websites of all the departments of labor do not have it specifically said how these will be folded into a claim, but let me see the exact verbiage here. Okay, this is Governor Cuomo now of New York. He submitted a request asking the president to authorize disaster unemployment, DUA, everything has initials, in light of COVID-19. So the pandemic unemployment assistance, it extends to gig workers, and the way it works is $600 a week plus half the average unemployment benefit in your state. So in New York, if it is 435, and I may have that figure wrong, let's assume it is, it would be half.
504, I think, is updated.
Oh, is it 504?
Yeah, it's been updated to 504. Mm-hmm.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, thank you very much. All right, 504. So half of that is 252. And so you would get, if all your work was on 1099 work, not W-2 work, which we'll get into later when we're talking about applying. There's a lot of stuff here, and we're trying to go at a slow pace. But if you were only had income from 1099 work, you would get that 252 plus 600 for a total of 852. And that extra 600, it goes until July 31st of this year. There may be an extension of that. Who knows what's going to happen with this, but for right now, it's July 31st. And I think that's a good walkthrough of the CARES Act. And you're probably sick of hearing me already, so I'll pass it on to whoever's next. Thank you.
Hey guys, so I believe I'm next on the docket. Hello, it's Sarah Seeds. I just first off wanted to start by saying thank you for tuning in. I hope you know that getting unemployment, there's zero stigma. You shouldn't feel bad about it. This is my second time doing it. So although I'm not an expert, I've done it successfully twice. So I figure, hey, and this is the time to get in on it, because right now all of our gigs have kind of been on hold. Our industry, whether we do acting work or broadcasting, a lot of stuff actually isn't going on right now, as well as any gigs that we do. I do a lot of like live producing and stuff like that. So this all falls under that. So this has been a godsend to me. This is how I'm still staying afloat. So I'm going to share a document. It's going to be one that I think has already been added to our chat. It's kind of like my little, let's see, New York State unemployment sheet. I think I'm going to share it. Hopefully that looks good. If everyone can see that. So this is my kind of Word document. Does that look good, Evan? Look good to you? Work. So this is kind of my quick little how to file a claim online. I'll be showing you a more in-depth step. So we're going to skip the steps part, but you can click here to get to that PDF that I shared. Those are the quick steps and things you're going to need before you file your claim. And this is for New York. This is the one I know. You need your Social Security. You need your driver's license or motor vehicle ID number if you have one, your complete mailing address and zip code, a phone number where they can reach you. If you are an alien registration card number, if you have that, if you're not a U.S. citizen, names and addresses of your employers, if you're self-employed or own a company, employer registration numbers or federal employee ID numbers. There will be on your W-2s and your copy forms of your SF-8 or SF-50 if you're a federal employee, and your most recent separation form if you've been in military service. I also have the handy dandy rate calculator. How it's typically been done is it's based on your highest earning quarter in the past 18 months, and they divide that by 26 to get your weekly amount. With the new provision, they're adding I believe 13, so it's 39 weeks with the new provision. And then New York City has upped it to 504 recently. So that's kind of the baseline for New York. You can actually see the earnings chart as well on this document. And some of my tips that I just, the first time I did it, I didn't know these things. You need to file weekly to get your benefits. The week starts over on Sunday. So I say log into the website after you've done the initial form and possible phone call that you have to do at your startup. Please log in weekly to get your benefits. When I first did this, I think my first time doing it was last year or the year before. I didn't log in for like a week or two. I was like, where's my money? It's because I didn't log in and file my weekly stuff. I also suggest searching for jobs frequently using either Job Zone or document it on a form they'll either provide, or you can just write down. So I actually write down, just as a quick tip, every time I submit on Actors Access, or I submit on Pop Bookings, or I submit on anything else, just to show that I'm actively pursuing jobs. Usually they don't do an audit, but sometimes they will check in on you and say, hey, have you been looking for gigs? And you're like, yes, ma'am, or sir, I have. So that's just like a quick rundown. Now I'm going to get into, let's stop sharing that. Any questions? Work. I don't see any questions yet. I'm going to start showing this document, which is kind of a basic how to do it on New York's website. Let me share this one as well. Word. I've never done this. This is pretty iconic. Okay. So this is basically the form. This will show everything how to sign in, what the website will look like. The website you go to is labor.ny.gov/home, and then that's where you'll be creating a user ID. So you'll point to the browser, the New York Department of Labor Online Services for Individuals. This is what the sign-in page looks like. It's pretty dope. You create a username and password. It's pretty simple, just like creating an email address and a password. I have mine on there already. After you register a username and password, you're brought to this page. This will be kind of your usual page that you'll have weekly. So when you ever want to file benefits, you'll be going to this unemployment insurance block. It's in the bottom right, just up above labor standards. When you click unemployment services, that's where you can file your claim weekly. So if you start to file a claim, like I said, on that lower box, the first time you do it, they're going to ask for your social security number. So you just confirm that twice. And then here is where you'll put in a 4-digit PIN that you'll create yourself, confirm the PIN, your mother's maiden name, and then confirm your mother's maiden name. After that, now you can start filing an actual claim. So once that is okayed, sometimes that takes you doing it once, and then you'll have a phone call with someone from unemployment office. You have to maybe do a phone call. A lot of people right now, some of them are getting right in through. I've done it before, so I didn't have to do the follow-up phone call after doing the initial form sign-in. But let's just say my roommate's never done it before, so he's gonna have to do that phone call. So first, after you do this original part, you'll then do a phone call, and then you can start filing a claim. And that's how you do it. So you click file a claim. It's a simple questionnaire, and the question will say, how many days did you work this week? It's okay if it's 0. There's literally no work right now, almost. You put in how many days you're unwilling to work, and if you were owed any vacation pay, and then that's it. And then you send it in, and you do that weekly. So it's pretty simple. So that's, I'm gonna stop sharing that form. And then, yeah, that's it. Thanks, guys. That's my little spiel.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah, Buzz, and Evan. So I have been able to claim unemployment for many, many, many years. I currently claim in New Jersey, which is something I'll talk about in a second. The rate is much higher than it is in New York. So the documents that Sarah just shared are great because they really detail like what each step is. Right now, you can complete a fair amount of the paperwork, the preliminary paperwork online. However, the system was overloaded at least today, and I'm sure other days as well. So you may find that you can't even get in online, which means you may have to try again to do that preliminary paperwork when you get up at 4 in the morning panicking. Well, that's a great thing to do is, try it then. Really the journey through unemployment is one of managing your frustration at not being able to reach a human being when you need to. But I can tell you a little bit about how I've managed to do that. Not manage my frustration, but reach a human being. So a couple of things. Yes, as far as your work search, obviously we'll no longer be having to go into the office, but it is worthwhile to keep a record of every audition that you have. It doesn't matter if it's an MP3, and then obviously whether or not you had an avail or if you actually got the booking or a job. Because when you do go into the office, even though we're performers and our job search doesn't look like maybe what another laborer's work search looks like, they do still need you to prove that you are looking for work. And for us, that translates into auditions. So just keep a file of that with the dates and the, you know, whoever the client is and how you got the audition. Was it through an agent or a website, whatever. Those things may come in handy should they ask you for them. Right now, should you be able to fill out your paperwork online, the second piece of certification, which is a phone call, they're doing it alphabetically. So in New Jersey, they're doing it by the last 4 digits of your social security, and they're assigning you a day of the week. Right now in New York, it's alphabetical, and you get a day of the week that you can certify. I believe if you miss your day, there's like 1 day at the end of the week where you can still call, but the system won't allow you in if your name if you're not on your day. So pay attention to that, write it down. Occasionally you'll reach some part of the system that says, no one is available, but we'll call you back. They will call you back. So stay by the phone, because they will call you back. If you do get a human being on the phone, the first question should be, if the call gets dropped, how do I get back in touch with you? They often will say there is no way to. You have to call the central system again, but it's worth asking. So be sure you do that. When you do reach a human being, or you are reaching the department that you want to reach, as you go and you're pushing the numbers through, write them down. Write down 1, 9, your PIN, social, because if you do have to reach a department again or that person again, it is far easier just to hit the prompts that you already know that you've recorded, rather than go through it all again. So that's something that can shorten your agony and frustration when you're trying to reach a human being. If you have worked in New Jersey, it is very much worth it to claim in New Jersey. The regulations to claim in New Jersey are, you either have worked every single job in New Jersey, or you have worked 1 job in New Jersey. So if you have worked 1 job in New Jersey, please try to claim in New Jersey. The max benefit rate is $713 a week, as opposed to $504. And I was encouraged to do this by somebody at the New York Department of Labor when I was calling to try to certify for benefits 2 years ago. And the woman handling my claim said, "Are you sure you don't want to claim in New Jersey?" And then walked me through how to do it. I find their system to be a lot more user-friendly. That's probably not going to be true right now because everybody is overwhelmed, but their system seems to be a tiny bit more humane. As far as whether or not you can claim unemployment benefits if you are a corporation, if you're incorporated, I have not been able to get a definitive answer on that. And I have a call out to legal at the union, as well as a couple of staff members at the union, to try to find out if that is true. I have seen some statements by leadership at the union saying that the union is working to try to secure unemployment benefits for members who are incorporated. But I cannot tell you right now how that works or if that works. I would imagine that there is going to be some provision for you guys, and we will keep you updated, but unfortunately right now I haven't been able to get that information in a way that feels really secure. A couple more things. Your residuals do not count, so they do not count as a day of work. That means that you are literally claiming for the day you have worked, for the day you recorded the MP3, for the day that you, gosh, I don't know what we're going to do these days, shot your part of the commercial in your home studio. Should you be lucky enough on any given week to receive a residual bundle of checks in the mail for $5 grand, $2 grand, $200, they do not count as unemployment. They are not wages. They will not mean that you cannot claim. So that's really important. Should they ever fix that loophole, I'll be super sad, but that is the case right now. As far as your 1099 employment, because I see some questions here in New Jersey, go ahead and start your claim. And then when you get the individual on the phone, explain to them quite carefully what your 1099 income is and what it's from. I have a lot of 1099 income because I work 2 other gigs. What was determined for me is that because my 1099 income is income that does not impede my ability to accept unemployment as an actor, it does not count as unemployment. And I had to go through like a lot of conversations and questions and answers to be sure about that, because it's really important that you do answer everything correctly. But it does seem that is the case. It certainly is for me. And then the last thing I wanted to say, which I keep forgetting, gosh darn it, 1099 employment, nope, it's gone. It's gone into ether. If I remember, I'll let you know. Let's assume it wasn't that important. Yeah.
Well, we'll have some time for you to
remember.
So it'll be good. Oops, I didn't just mute myself. Let's see. I think I'm doing okay. Yeah, and I know there's been some discussions about if you have an S corp or a C corp, a registered LLC, sole proprietorship. I know the union is working on finding out more information, essentially, especially if people use them as loan out companies, which is a big sort of question. So I know, I believe those will be covered under the new tax law. It's just because it just passed, there's usually similar to like when the GOP tax bill came out, there's a little bit of a period for how to actually interpret that bill and understanding. And so that does sort of, I mean, I'm sure they're working on it, you know, as fast as they can, but it will take a moment for them to get out the proper information to how to do such a new thing.
Also, I wanted to say I have a sole proprietorship, and last year and this time there was no issue whatsoever. I was still eligible to do unemployment. Again, that's because I don't have an LLC, but I do have a sole proprietorship. I had 0 issues, just FYI. And also, this is being recorded, correct, Evan? So people can watch us who are just joining us now. I noticed we had some uptick in participants, so you guys can always watch this later. So no worries, you didn't miss out on anything.
Evan, sorry, I remembered what it was I wanted to say. So with each week that you claim, the information that you have to give them is who your employer was that week. Or who your employer was for that job. Sometimes this took me a long time to figure this out. Maybe other people were a lot smarter than I was. I would, do the gig and then think I don't know which paymaster they're going to use until I get the check. It says on your contract. So get a copy of your contract, and it will say on your contract whether they're using Team, whether they're using Extreme Reach, whether they're using NB. That is your employer of record. Do not worry if you don't know the EIN number of your employer. It'll ask you for it, but if you don't know, you just say you don't know. Keep, as you go, keep a list of, Extreme Reach's address and phone number, because you're going to have to put that in every time that you work for them. They're your paymaster. Same for Team, same for whoever. Just keep a list, notes in your notes file on your laptop, because you're going to have to put in 111 Jackson Boulevard every single time that you work for, I think that's Extreme Reach. If for some reason you do a job and you don't know the employer, you're given like a standard contract or something and it doesn't have it on, and you don't feel like you can ask the producer, which paymaster are you using, then that week, instead of filing online, you want to file on the phone, because they will generate a piece of paper that they will send you, which will arrive 3 weeks later. And by that time, you probably will know. That does mean you won't get those benefits until you fill out that piece of paper. But if you really don't know who your employer was, you can't claim anyway. So you might as well do it on the phone, and then you're going to get that piece of paper. Actually, they probably send it in a week, but you have a while to send it back. That's the brilliant thing that I forgot to say that I just remembered.
We're going to jump over to Buzz, who's going to talk a little bit more about eligibility.
Yes, thank you. And Phoebe and I were talking before about this. I know there are some people here today who've never applied for unemployment at all and don't even know what it is. And there is a misconception of some people that it's some form of welfare. It's charity, something like that. And I can tell you that it is not. It is a benefit that is part of the labor movement that people have fought for to provide for us, same as a safe working place. That's why they call it unemployment insurance. So I'm always amazed when I meet people who feel strange about applying for unemployment, like they're on the well, they say on the dole in England, but I mean it's a very different thing here. So first of all, general eligibility, and again, this is New York centric. Most states follow this model. There are 2 points of eligibility. It is enough employment to qualify, and also if you lost a job through no fault of your own. For most actors, a job ends, you shot a movie, and the reason that you don't have work anymore is officially, they call it lack of work. So now an actor's life is, we will have, unlike someone who works for IBM, they have one employer. We can have several employers in several different states, and there is an accommodation with the various departments of labor to fold all that in so you can have a claim. So in New York, for instance, you have to have worked in at least 2 quarters in your base period. I should talk about what a base period is. When you apply, so today is the 30th of March, you divide the year into 4 quarters. The first quarter is January, February, March, and then every 3 months is another quarter. So what most states do, including New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut, is they take the first 4 of the last completed 5 quarters. So now we're in the middle of, for another 2 days, the first quarter of 2020. So the quarter before us started October 1st of 2019. That quarter is not used. They use the 4 before that. So starting in October 1st of 2018 to September 30th of 2019, that is your look back period. Everybody with me so far? So what they're going to do is divide that look back period into 4 quarters, take the highest quarter of earnings that you have, and from that, they will determine your benefit rate. And it's done with different formulas for the most part. Most states do it. They divide the highest quarter by 26, because 26 is a number of weeks that you can collect your money. And then you have a year to use up that money. 26 weeks is 6 months. So, and you can work while you're on unemployment. We'll get to that down the road. But you have 26, let's say for argument, your benefit rate is $100 a week. The amount of money that you would get is $2,600 for your claim. And you will have a year to use that up. Now, about eligibility, now we have the 1099s working in, because those employers do not pay into the fund, the 1099s are going to be used as a yardstick rather than actual money that goes into the formula. I know that sounds very Byzantine, because it is, and it's a last minute thing, it's a good thing, especially for those of us who do gigs that aren't on W-2s. Now, those of us who, when we work for any SAG-AFTRA contract, equity contract, we get paid on a W-2, so we are considered employees. Even though we work like freelancers, we're still employees. 1099, and I know this is remedial for some of you, but some of you are new. 1099 means that you are responsible for all your taxes and everything like that, and the employer has eschewed responsibility for that, which is not a moral thing. It's just the way it is. So, so your eligibility is determined based on your money. If you've worked in enough quarters, in Connecticut, you have to have worked in 2 quarters, and I believe it's earned at least $1,600 in 1 quarter. And I won't go into all the rules. They're on the website, and we all have lots of time. So look at the website and try to figure it out. We're going to talk about the salience point here, because otherwise everybody would go to sleep. That's pretty much it for eligibility for now. I think that's enough to chew on. Somebody else take it.
As I just put some dried fruit in my mouth. My apologies.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the chat stuff about residuals. So as I understand it, and again, I've claimed for probably 10 years in New York and 2 years in New Jersey. So yes, they do calculate, they do take your total income into consideration when they're determining your max benefit rate, whether or not you reach the max benefit rate. What you are claiming on is your day of work. So not whether or not you received residual checks in the mail that week, it is your day of work. Session, yes. Residuals, no, because residuals don't belong to that day of work. It's, what your session fee was, if you're lucky enough to be, somebody who's getting some outsized contract for that day of work, whatever that total was. And, it's really kind of up to you to decide if you did a demo. It's up to you whether or not you want to receive partial benefits that week or none at all. You can say, yes, it'll ask you, did you make more than X amount this week? There are times that I've said, yes, they don't come after you for not claiming on a week. If for some reason, it will always ask you, were you available and ready to work? If there is a week that you are not, nobody's traveling right now, but for some reason, if there's a week that you truly are not, you want to be honest about that. All it's going to do is push your weeks forward, and you're going to have a week where you don't work. So for instance, again, not really an issue right now, but we're talking about 39 weeks. Let's hope that in the future, people maybe go away for a week. If you go out of the country for a week, you just don't claim that week. In New York State, if you are planning to go out of the country, you need to let them know ahead of time. You need to upload your passport, and you need to upload a photo of your travel documents. New York wants to know about that ahead of time. New Jersey just says don't claim that week. And again, I'm happy to, if anyone wants to email me, you can ask me more about that. Probably won't come up right now, but let's assume within 39 weeks, people will be traveling again.
And I also just wanted to jump in just to sort of say an additional thing related to residuals. If you get a residual check, that doesn't mean you are specifically working. That is just something that is coming in. And so just to sort of, I guess, amplify what Phoebe was saying, a residual doesn't count as a day of work. It just counts as a benefit from, having worked previously. So if you get, a check for 25 cents, it doesn't mean you worked that day for 25 cents kind of thing, or a few dollars or whatever. So just to keep in mind as being honest individuals, and we like to report the proper things, that it's not something you feel guilty about saying, oh, I got this money. for a day worked because it was, you know, on a specific week that you are reporting, because you're not reporting, you didn't actually do work that day, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I'm gonna want to just run through some of these questions and throw it out to all of the panelists. I think some of them are already answered, but I'm just double checking.
I'm sorry, I just do want to say one more thing, and thank you to someone who just reminded me of this. If you travel to another state, you cannot use your laptop or your phone to claim that week. You have to be physically in the state, and you can't be out of the country either. They can check the IP, and they will let you know that you can't do this. So you have to be in New York State when you're claiming that week, whether you're on your laptop or on your phone, and the same goes for New Jersey and probably any other state. Again, not a lot of traveling happening right now, but in 2 months, if you go home to visit your parents in Pennsylvania and you're claiming in New York, you cannot claim that week from your laptop or your phone if you're not in New York State, and it doesn't matter if it's on your cell phone.
And just wanted to reiterate, just because I saw another question post about this. So the CARES Act did just recently pass legislation. Just wanted to reiterate, passing legislation and then becoming actual applicable rules being implemented by the IRS does take a moment. And so it did pass. We know the benefits that will be coming from it, but those who have whose job is to take the legislation and translate it to actual material use, it will have a little bit of delay. So that's why sometimes you don't see it on state websites or specific things with more explicit details on how to do things. And as soon as they will become available, I'm sure, especially in New York, you know, Cuomo and de Blasio will be blasting out information on that and giving you references, and it'll be on the front page of all of the respective government sites. So just be aware, it will potentially take a second for it to be implemented. And so right now it's sort of amplifying the message of what can be, and as soon as we know, you probably will know at the exact same time, because it'll be blasted out.
Sorry, Evan, I have one more thing to say, guys. Because some of this stuff is, I'd love it to be black and white, but some of it is a little bit gray, especially when it comes to performers, because the Department of Labor, not surprisingly, really doesn't understand what we do for a living. It doesn't understand how we get paid. If you're speaking to a human being at the Department of Labor, whatever state you're claiming, take notes, timestamp it. What time are you getting this information? And ask them for their name and their employee number if they'll give it to you. Not because we're getting anyone in trouble, but because if anything arises where you have to refer back to what you were told, it's really helpful to have notes, because mistakes are made, and people, unsurprisingly, at the Department of Labor also make mistakes. So that's just another thing you can do to really cover yourself. And then please take a snapshot of that piece of paper with those important notes on it with your phone, because you will lose that piece of paper.
Phoebe, thank you. I want to add something to that too. There are some people in various departments of labor who get actors more than others. If I get somebody who just doesn't get it at all, just hang up and call back again, which is hard to do these days, but to get somebody who more understands the way we work. There's some people who know actors really well, and some people just don't want to be bothered, because some people hate actors because they're just a lot of work for them, instead of somebody who works for one company and it's a pro forma easy thing to do. I just wanted to say one other thing also about the 1099 situation. There are a lot of us who have done, for instance, catering work under 1099 forms, and have mistakenly claimed in the past unemployment and gotten into a trouble with the employer. The employer doesn't want to pay anything. There's a dispute as to whether you're actually an employee and all that kind of thing. This has nothing to do with that. If you have any fear about involving any of your past employers who you worked under a 1099 for fear that you're not going to get work in the future, when we're all going to be working very soon, hopefully, don't worry about that, because that's not going to be in a situation. If we're getting into disputes later, but if you get into a hearing situation, they won't be involved. It's a mathematical thing rather than an actual money thing for them.
So I was going to jump through. So I was just replying. So I'm just going to say this real quick. A reminder to people who are posting questions on just the chat feature. There's a Q&A feature. If you would post your questions there, I'm going to start reading through them and then opening it up to the panel to answer. Unless, Buzz, you had something specific you wanted to jump in on right now.
No. Please go ahead, Evan.
So I'm going to just do that. But yeah, if you could ask them on the Q&A feature, it just gives us an easy location to ask the questions. I think we've already answered this first one, but I'm still going to read it out loud. I'm an actor with a New York S Corp. I live in New Jersey, and I'm curious if I should file it in New York, where I do most of my acting work. I get W-2s, mostly for residuals for my acting gigs, before I incorporated, and then the majority of my income is from 1099s for the S Corp jobs.
So I think we've dealt with that. We don't have a firm answer about how that is going to be dealt with. Right now, as it stands, in the current rules, anybody with an S Corp would not be eligible, but it looks like it's changing. And one thing I wanted to add to what you said, Evan, a good source for updated information is the SAG-AFTRA website in the news section. There are people who are keeping that as current as soon as they find information. But anyway, to anonymous attendee at 2:18 p.m., we don't quite know yet.
I'm sorry.
And yeah, I added to the chat earlier on a few links that are on our Google Docs as well that SAG-AFTRA recently came out with, just talking about the CARES Act benefits. And so I'm sure, just as Buzz said, over the course of the next days, weeks, SAG-AFTRA will be posting and probably blasting out little graphics, updating members on new developments and how to go about it. I know, like, literally 5 minutes before we started this panel, we got an update from somebody just with stuff about that it is being worked on for loan outs, but there's no information yet. But as it comes, they'll let people know. So it's sort of, yeah, as Buzz said, they're starting so many new pathways to unemployment, which is greatly helpful and will benefit a lot of people. But because of that, they're just going to kind of come out in spurts.
Oh, but if I may just add, don't let that stop you from opening a claim. The worst that can happen is they deny your claim, but you want to have a claim open so you can collect whatever money you are entitled to.
Evan, I'm sorry, it's Phoebe again, and thank you, Deb Sperling, for pointing out my idiocy, although she didn't say it that way. You, of course, can claim from a different state. Obviously, I claim in New Jersey, and I'm claiming from New York State. It's really about leaving the country, which, as I say, should not be a problem for anyone right now. But when and if you do, they will track your IP codes, and they'll know if you're trying to claim from another country. Hit me back when we can all go to other countries again. Thanks.
All right. There's a question from James, but can only be done on the phone. I'm not 100% sure what that reference is, but if you want to clarify that question, let us know. I do believe you can file for unemployment both via the website and on phone. I know sometimes both lines are busy, or one line is busy and the other one is not. I know last Thursday when I was doing a hangout with some friends online, one of the people started and finished her unemployment form online, and had tried calling last week, and also had tried the unemployment site earlier that day, and it wasn't working. So it's just sort of a check back. I think they're getting sort of overwhelmed. But if you just can't get access via the website, that doesn't mean it's completely not working. It means it might just be full. Same thing with the phone lines. I'm gonna jump down. Okay. Taxes. This one says, I recently became S Corp. I filed corporation taxes and personal income taxes. Can I file for my personal income taxes? So I'm assuming the interpretation of this question is you get W-2s from your personal income, and then you also have an S Corp. So I'm going to give my best answer on this, and then probably pass it on to somebody who knows this a little more expert for me. Previously, before the CARES Act, my understanding is if you owned a corporation, you were considered an employer. as an employer, you cannot file for unemployment, and thus complicated the sort of the personal income tax side of things by the act of owning a corporation, sort of excluded you from being able to file. But one of the things that the CARES Act potentially does, I believe it does, is changes this so you would be able to. That's I'm assuming similar to W-2 and 1099 mix of things, you would be able to do the same thing with your income tax, and also related to how much money you made through your S Corp as well. But also open it up to anybody who knows some additional information or corrects me.
Well, one thing I'll say, as I emphasized before, it's a fluid situation and no one knows for sure. But the main thing is open the claim so you can, if there is money to be got, if you are eligible, you can start getting it.
All right. Okay, it says go in. I'm just trying to go in order, and then I went backwards. I do a lot of side work for cash. Almost none of these people issue 1099s. I do claim all of it on my tax returns. It was a huge amount of my 2018 return. Haven't done 2019 returns yet. Do we know with the new relief laws how they will determine non-employment benefits of this self-employment? So essentially considered additional income that you would put on your form, but additional income outside of 1099.
Well, I'll just say, again, this is fluid. We don't know how this works. I was talking to an actor who does a lot of celebrity celebrity lookalike work, and he'll do, an office party or something like that, and he'll get a check not from, he'll be paid like as if he supplies rather than getting a 1099. He declares all that on his taxes. So everybody I've talked to who knows about this kind of thing says that as if you have a record of that and a diary of when you did these jobs, as this situation is developing, the more information you have about that income will help. And we don't know what the processes are yet for doing that kind of income, but we are told as part of the CARES Act that will be considered for unemployment. We just don't know how yet. Keep all your information and have your tax returns and your diary of when you did this work. Anyone else?
And just to add to that, it's very good that you claimed it. So with 1099 laws in New York, and I believe it might be all over the country, but I know New York laws, an employer doesn't need to supply a 1099 unless they paid you $600 or more per year. However, actually claiming it on your tax returns, no matter how much, gives you a great benefit, because it does keep that as a record, right? When you file it and you announce it, the IRS has that as a record. You've paid taxes on that money. So that definitely should help you out. I would say the situation where you don't claim it at all and you weren't given a 1099, that might be a little bit harder a sell on unemployment as considered work. But I feel like, as an educated guess, if you reported it to the IRS, then that would count as a record because you have paid taxes on it, as a means for which they would pull to figure out qualification items.
Wait, I'm sorry. Did you just say that cash money, I believe unless you're generated an actual 10, I'm not sure that's true. I think we need to get more definitive information about that, because I have a feeling that is not the case, but I wish I could pull up the information at the moment that says that that's true. But I don't think I don't know that that's correct.
Okay, I can, yeah, I guess we'll update this. I pay 1099 contractors through one of my companies, and so
Right.
that's where my knowledge comes from. I think there's I guess the asterisk that's probably coming up from this sort of quandary of if you have to report it is how the government knows that somebody is paid is either through a W-2 being filed or a 1099
Right.
being filed.
Right.
So if an employer doesn't file a 1099, so pays you less than $600, technically the government does not have a record that you were paid. So if you do not pay any taxes on that, they will not know that you could have.
Yeah, I think the disconnect is that it's the W-2 wages, like it's about calculating your benefits. And so we can like post more about this, but generally speaking, 1099 income isn't traditionally counted towards an unemployment claim because that employer is not paying into the fund. So it's only the funds that are being paid into. So W-2 wages are subject to unemployment insurance tax, but not 1099, which is why they're not counting the 1099 money as far as establishing your base rate, as far as I understand it.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah,
no. To clarify, I guess the taxes that you paid when you note that as additional income is
right.
Self-employment tax that you're paying, but
Mm-hmm.
not unemployment tax.
Right.
Yeah,
okay.
everybody we sorry to be so wishy-washy. This law was passed 3 days ago and it's still being developed. So, and we're very insistent on saying only what we know, which is why we're not have definitive answers for you now. But keep looking at the SAG-AFTRA website and the city and state websites too.
But I think, Evan, what you just said at the end is correct about it being self-employment tax. So thank you.
I'm gonna just jump down to this question. So I booked a pilot and was out in LA about to shoot, doing table reads, etc., when it was called off due to the virus. I have a signed contract for that pilot. I think Buzz mentioned that I could work that into an unemployment claim. At what point in the application process would I do that? Would that be something that I talk to them about over the phone, or would I submit that info during the online application process? So I just want to throw in before I jump over to Buzz. I know SAG-AFTRA has been talking about force majeure and how that plays into things. Also, I know Cuomo and de Blasio have talked about how work that was set up to be done, but then had to be canceled because of it would be counted. So I know they're taking into effect. That said, as Buzz said, it only passed a few days ago. So it'll be coming out more and more. But I'm gonna throw it over to Buzz if you have any additional things sort of to add to that.
Well, just one thing, Evan, you mentioned force majeure, which is a clause in all our contracts. Basically, it's the act of God clause. And one of the things is when a job ends for something like this, it is arguable whether the job was canceled by the employer on his or her own, or whether it was an act of God and they had no choice in the matter. And whichever one of those decisions is, and different people want different outcomes for different reasons, that will decide if anybody is entitled to any unemployment, or whether if the job just ended, or if the employer is, so to speak, off the hook because it was an act of God. In addition, my friend Francis was asking about lost wages and work. And again, we don't know, but if you have a signed contract, that is a far more solid case for getting a credit for work that was canceled in the future. I don't know if a deal memo would work. Some of us have deal memos. That's another one of those things that's evolving. But so we don't really know, but we're told in the CARES law that if you missed future work because of COVID, that it will count into your unemployment. And that's all we know at this point.
I'm gonna mark these done real quickly and then keep going. In regards to quarters, that looks at your W-2 income from those quarters. I'm assuming it will also integrate in related to 1099. This is I'm not sure. I mean, yes would be the answer, but let me throw it out there if there was anything else that somebody is reading into this question beyond that.
Sorry, can you say it again, Evan?
Yep. And in regards to quarters, that only looks at your W-2 income from those quarters. I'm assuming that will push forward to 1099 work as well as they expand what the bill does. But yes, it would
Yeah.
look at income.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true. As I said, I can only sort of tell you from my own experiences that it was very important to sort of distinguish between 1099 wages that impeded my ability to work as an actor, as opposed to work that I may be doing on my own to bring in income that acting work will always take precedence over. I don't need to ever cancel acting a job or an audition as the result of this work that I'm doing to bring in 1099 income. At least in New Jersey, that required a lot of conversations until we got clarity about that. Moving forward and sort of where the new provisions are, I don't have an answer for that right now.
So I'm not 100% sure what this question asks, but it's a sort of New Jersey. Do you have to be in New Jersey to claim in New Jersey from your laptop?
No.
You can be in Idaho.
Despite my saying so earlier, no, you don't. You do have to be in the country.
Yeah. So I've booked work in New York and then flown out to LA to do some more work, but I didn't meet the threshold of my just yet, because I only booked like one day of something and it was like weird. But anyway, I was in LA when I filed once and it didn't matter as long as it's you. So it's all good. Just don't go to another country.
Okay, so this next one was just about eligibility in New York, how many quarters you have to work in New York to qualify. So I also want to remind those who joined a little later or may have missed it, in the chat window, there are links to a number of Google Docs that walk through a lot of the aspects of what we've been talking about and sort of lay things out and give more details. So I believe the numbers related to how many quarters you need to qualify for New York, but Buzz,
Yeah.
do you want to just touch on that again?
Sure. Now, for New York State, you must have, now this is the rules before we figure in 1099s and everything like that. This is W-2 wages we're talking about, including residuals. So you must have worked or gotten a residual in at least 2 quarters of your base period. And again, the base period is the look back time. It's the first 4 completed quarters of the last 5 completed quarters. In other words, the one we're in, not now, the one before is not used, the 4 before that are used. So within that base period, you have to have worked at least 2 quarters. You have to have earned at least $2,200 in 1 quarter. And your total wages for the entire 4-quarter base period must be 1 1/2 times your highest quarter. That's it.
Calculus class will be right after this one. Okay, so this one says, I opened a claim but was told online that I have to call. Been calling for days but nobody answers. I mean, I'm assuming the answer is just keep calling. Anybody else have additional?
Stay
Call
vigilant.
Early.
Stay vigilant.
Call early.
Yeah, I just said in the chat, I believe the tel line, I don't remember actually in New York if it opens at 7 or 8 a.m. I think it's 8 a.m. Maybe they'll change the hours. So, be there with your phone at 7:56 a.m. You don't want to do it too early because you'll have to go through the whole process again. And then, make the redial button your very best friend. It should retain all of the prompts that you had to put in the first time. Sorry, cats. This is really, as I said earlier at the beginning of the call, for me, this is the most soul-crushing and frustrating part of the process, is actually when you can't get through and you have to just keep trying and keep trying. I suppose the only good news here, which is wrapped up in a lot of bad news, is that many of us have the time right now. We're not out on auditions. We're not on the subway when they might call back. So, stay the course. You will reach someone. It's going to take longer than you want it to. And it's really going to be frustrating along the way. But I've had to do it before when we weren't in crisis. And so, yeah, redial. But, also take a break if it's making you crazy and come back to it the next day.
And also just throwing it out there, I got a new license from the DMV And think about it like you're going to the DMV. The people who show up the earliest usually get it because some people are lazy and don't want to wake up early. And then try and figure out which parts of the day people don't want to do something. If it's East Coast, lunchtime sometime is the time to call, or sometimes I can get really busy. My guess is Mondays are, you know, sometimes easier than, or end of the weeks rather than middle of the weeks, but you know, use your best judgment on trying to game the system on windows that would be less. But also know, what is it? There were 3.3 million people who, or however many, in the last couple weeks nationally, and I'm sure it's growing. So both don't get frustrated by the calls, but also realize the people who are taking those calls are workers like the rest of us, and don't get frustrated at them. They're probably going continuously from when they get the call, when they step in the office, and keep going. So just don't take out your frustration on them.
And remember, it's your money. Get your money.
Okay. Whoa, jumping around. So, okay, I think, so how are LLCs viewed in all this? I have two LLCs for two different films I produce, but they don't make any money. It's more for legal protection. So that will, again, come into, as we sort of said, related to the CARES Act, the changes related to being an owner of an LLC. My guess is it'll allow you to use your other income to then be the base for which you are getting unemployment. Hopefully this will help with a lot of other shifts that are happening because of the pandemic. It's shifting us to be smarter as a nation. And I think this hopefully will be something that stays, where if you have an LLC for a film, because you need liability for it, it doesn't screw you over from other things.
There was a question, it's not in the Q&A, but it was in our chat, or maybe it was added to the Q&A. Evan, I just didn't know. Can you tell me where you're at in our question so I can make sure we include it?
Justice at 250. I'm trying to go down
Okay.
in open ones at the moment, and trying to go by time. So
Okay, I think I answered one by accident that maybe wanted to stay open. So when you're done with justice, I'll switch back to that one. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'll do that one real quick. So Buzz is saying, open a claim. If we don't have an official answer on the S Corp LLC, I'm a single member LLC issue. When we open a claim, do we just put down our last official W-2 job as the most recent day of work?
That's what I would do. That's all I can tell you.
Get your money. Yeah, it's a creative way. It's a creative way of, you know, you earn that money. That is something you worked for. So we have to be creative. So just like anything else, I'd say apply, get your money.
Hashtag get your money. Going over to you, Phoebe, for the additional questions.
Yeah, sorry. So somebody had posted in the chat about having traveled out of state to take care of a sick relative and then being in quarantine in that state for sort of an unknown period of time and not being able to work, as well as not being available and willing to work, not being available and ready to work because they're out of state. As I understand it, and this has to do with the regular unemployment laws, and I can't, you know, maybe there will be a provision now, but I believe that you would not be able to file a claim, open a claim in New York State based on your earnings in New York State because you are out of state. Not because you could, you know, claim weekly benefits if you just happen to go to Florida for, you know, a week, but because you're not ready and available for work. And that's really what it hinges on.
I suggest also, not to interrupt, but I suggest also there's a creative solution and as well. If I were to go down to Virginia to be with my parents, I'd probably still claim in New York because I'd still be applying for voiceover jobs and focus groups. You know, so there's a way to creatively, some ways, if you talk to someone on the phone, I don't want you to commit any, you know, fraud or anything, but I'm just saying if you talk to someone on the phone and you say, hey, I have to relocate due to safety or whatever, but I'm still applying to jobs that I can do remotely and I'm based out of New York, I think that's a way to creatively circumvent this issue. That's what I'd be doing.
That's
I'd give it a shot.
creative that actually fulfills everything that the Department of Labor says that
Right.
to do. You don't have to
Yeah.
be in New York.
Right. I think
Right.
that makes sense if you do voiceover work, you know,
Or focus groups.
focus
or-
group. I mean, right now you're not able to travel back to New York if you get booked on a gig, but we're certainly all, you know, if you can record a voiceover on your phone, then I think Sarah's probably right. You know, I'm more in favor of being as conservative as you can be, because I think it pays off in the end. But certainly if there were ever a time to be creative within the scope of the law, this is that time. So that's good advice, Sarah.
Jump down to this next one. As a president of my C Corp, I hire paychecks to pay me a personal salary, wondering if they look at your personal income that you pay yourself or the money that my corporation is making. So as we talked about this, you know, the CARES Act, what will fully come out of it is still being sort of released. It's just for those who don't know how C Corps work. C Corps different than, say, sole proprietorship. The owner is paid what is considered an appropriate salary, and then pays taxes on that salary, and then the rest of the money that the corporation makes is taxed at the corporation tax level. It's just a different tax. It is one means, depending on how much you are making, to save on not paying self-employment tax on all of that. The company pays for half of it, and the employee, who is yourself, pays for half of it. But it's a means of accounting, but also saves on self-employment tax in general. My personal guess would be that because it's a C Corp, they would separate the individual from the company, because the company would be counted as a business. That's why it's paying business taxes, unlike a sole proprietorship that pays just general income taxes. And therefore, it would probably base it on your W-2 salary that you get from the C Corp or from paychecks. But I want to just throw it out if anybody else has any additional thoughts on that.
You said it.
Evan, I just wanted to note on the participant chat, I just posted the New York unemployment claims handbook, the claimant handbook. You know, visit the website and familiarize yourself with that handbook. There's a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here that doesn't have to do with being an S Corp that is covered there. And any state that you claim in, you know, familiarize yourself with the website, and also download and look at the handbook, because that is really where all this information lives in a less digestible form, but probably more succinct and correct.
Oh, and you know, I looked at the handbook this morning. It is the handbook that does not take into account any of the CARES Act. So bear that in mind when you're looking at it.
Yeah, that's the standard, everything as it was before 2 weeks ago.
Do you think you should still file a claim to open a claim even on a 1099? I would like to get it started, but don't want to do it incorrectly. So if you only have 1099 income, is my guess is what this question is. What is the best way to start a claim if they haven't sort of come out with anything yet?
Who wants to take that one?
I want to look at it, look at the question. Where was that one?
256.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you think you should still file a claim to
I
open a
see.
claim?
To open a claim even on time. I mean, look, everyone on this panel has answered this question as they are comfortable with. I can only tell you what I'm comfortable with. I'm not comfortable opening a claim until I understand the scope of the claim, what I'm allowed to do, what I'm not allowed to do, as well as what portion of my income is going to generate the highest base rate. So for my money, you know, it's more worth it to take the time to ensure that you have all the information that you need, as well as you're claiming on the income that's going to give you the highest base rate before you open a claim. That's what I'm comfortable with, but you know, everyone here is comfortable with something different and has done many different ways of this successfully. So that's just the answer from me.
Yeah, I think that, you know, my whole thing, since the 1099 thing is an unknown, I would say open the claim now. And, you know, if you do it wrong, whatever that means, nothing bad happens to you. I mean, the worst that can happen is you don't get money. As long as you're telling the truth in everything that you say with the Departments of Labor, you're going to be all right. And if there are questions with that, well, we won't be on this webinar, but we have staff at SAG-AFTRA who are there to help you. Now, of course, it's kind of a skeleton crew at the moment because of all this going on, but we do have dedicated people who can help you with any problems. And as it gets updated, they will have more information than we have at the moment.
And actually, Buzz, you just raised a good point, and I want to really like drive this one point home. As great as we all are, us four panelists, this is not an official SAG-AFTRA webinar, guys. Okay, so I want to be clear about that. This isn't sponsored by your union. We are union members. Some of us are board members. Some of us are longtime volunteers with a certain level of expertise. But this is not an official sanctioned union webinar. This is, the union knows we're doing this and is very glad that we're stepping in to offer our own personal knowledge. But I want to be clear about that, because when the union does offer official documentation and information, it will be watertight as possible, which is why it's not being offered at the moment, because it has to go through layers of legal and it has to go through layers of consultants and making sure that what they're offering the membership is as watertight and as up to date as possible. So again, take everything we're saying in, what's helpful and what isn't, but please continue to check with the union, and we'll continue to let you guys know when that official information is made public, because that's probably where you're going to get the best, most up-to-date, and most verifiable information.
And to piggyback on that, it looks like somebody posted that they heard that SAG-AFTRA staff has already started training on the CARE Act, and as information comes into them, so soon they will be able to answer, you know, the members' questions in much more detail than we are able to, because we are just, you know, from experience and from, you know, our knowledge. And as Phoebe said, we are not, you know, we are not SAG-AFTRA staff who will be as watertight as can be in things. And that's why, you know, it sometimes takes the union a little longer to get everything together. It's because they're making sure they are 100% sure of those answers. And, you know, you don't get the, you know, not educated, but, you know, best answer available at the moment that we can give, kind of thing. You'll get the best answer.
How are we doing on time, Evan?
It is 3:16. I think, are you guys okay going to 3:30? Go another 14 minutes?
Yeah.
Phoebe, I know you have, you good for now?
That's okay. I moved things around. I'm okay for another 15 minutes.
So I'm gonna keep going through, answer that one. All right, just jumping back to the previous question, somebody, I guess, had responded about the S-Corp related to a question. So they ran into the situation a couple years ago where they filed for unemployment, and because their S-Corp was their main employer, the state said that they had their S-Corp was the person who should be paying their unemployment benefits. My guess is that will all change with this CARES Act. That seems like a very silly loophole that existed, and exists mainly for kind of like the loan out situations. And so it has to be updated with this CARES Act, or that's not going to be very helpful.
Yep.
All right. CARES Act now counts self-employment, gig works, freelancers, and not just W-2 employment now. If it's correct that cash earnings will not count, even if this money is reported on taxes, how will the stimulus package actually help? I'm just going to keep, I'll just dot that, ellipses. I think the main thing is cash earnings will count. That is one of the main aspects of, I mean, cash earnings or earnings that are not paid via employer, especially if you've reported them on your tax returns. But open-ended with, as long as you kept a record, there is the chance potentially that they would allow you, even for things that were under $600 paid by a specific individual or company to you, and you didn't claim them, that those could be counted. So I think that will be counted, to answer that question of what if they aren't counted? Okay. One, what's the fastest way to get a copy of a residuals pay stub if I receive the residuals as part of a lump sum held in trust from SAG, payroll company, or SAG?
If I'm not mistaken, it should be on the residuals portal, no, on the website?
Yeah. So yeah, I would say on SAG-AFTRA, when you log in, there's a residuals portal that does keep track of everything. It keeps track if it's direct deposit, it keeps track of all that, but I also believe it has a history and the amount you've made during a certain time period.
That's correct. However, you will get a better, I cross-reference that against the P&H website, which also lists your income per quarter. And so that can be a little bit more difficult only because it won't distinguish between session and residual. So have your dates of work next to you so you know what payments correspond to the day of work. But both the P&H website, which is tracking your earnings so that it can be sure that you've qualified for, plan 1 or 2, as well as the SAG-AFTRA website will have a record of your residual earnings, which sessions are a part of, but you just need to know your dates of work so that you can clarify what's a session and what's a residual payment, if that's something you need to do.
Part 2 is asking, is there a way to make sure that a small mom and pop business I work for on W-2 as a side gig isn't negatively affected by my unemployment claim? I want to designate my most recent network TV job as my most recent employer. Is that possible and okay?
The way I read that is that the person is still working, is still employed by the mom and pop. And if that is correct, then according to the New York State Department of Labor, you're not entitled to unemployment because you are still employed. If you were released from the mom and pop, or if it had to close down because of COVID, that's a different story. But if you're still engaged in working for this every week, you're employed.
And if the question, just given the alternate possibility of the question, if you're saying the mom and pop shop has paused work because of COVID currently, but because you work for them, you don't want them to have to pay the unemployment. There was a recent Senate bill that came out both talking about the 1099 employees, but also about small businesses and getting support because a lot of small businesses are going to have issue. I think it was in the same bill as like small businesses paying rent as well as to landlords and things like that. So there are upcoming legislation and continued legislation related to this because the state and government knows that these small businesses are also greatly affected, especially from self quarantines.
Just one thing, if I may add, I understand what the person is talking about, wanting to make the TV job the last bit of employment. That might work unless his or her wages are already in the system at Department of Labor, in which case they will know without you telling them. Sorry, Phoebe.
Oh, no, that's fine. I just wanted to say, and thank you for people who are attending and also pinging me with messages so I can be sure what I'm saying is accurate. Just to clarify, the SAG-AFTRA website, the residuals it's going to show are TV and film residuals. The P&H is going to can also show you your commercial residuals, which again I had forgotten and is true. So you're probably going to want to look at both to get a sense of, the majority of my earnings are commercial, so I don't actually check it. The SAG-AFTRA website isn't going to have the bulk of my earnings. I always look at P&H. But if you have earnings spread out across commercials and TV theatrical or TV film, look at both because, that's good for you. You'll have both. And why that's the case is a long conversation that isn't worth going into right now.
All right, this related, people mentioned speaking to their accountant. Any recommendations on great New York accountants doing taxes remotely?
I think that's not in our purview here.
I personally, I I have 3 incorporated LLCs, and I do all of my own taxes, so it's possible.
Hire you.
Well, don't hire me because I'm not officially a CPA. But I mean, as long as you keep good records, I mean, I hate to say this because I'm not a fan of Intuit as a company in kind of manipulating the laws so that people have to use them. But like TurboTax or things like that, you know, are doable if you keep your records well. That said, if you want additional liability purposes, there are CPAs, and you know, I just recommend looking up or asking friends if they have recommendations.
And
or
also to
CPAs.
keep us going, because we don't have a lot of time,
Yep.
I also think if anyone has any recommendations themselves, they should write it in the chat. If you have a good person, anyone that's participating right now.
Is it true that nothing bad will happen to you if you claim incorrectly? If you claim before 100% sure and the Department of Labor determines off this claim that your benefit rate is $40 a week, I'm assuming more or less, can you just file a new correct claim next week?
I assume you're not talking about fraud. You're talking about a mistake, right?
Oh yeah, because I'm assuming you, since you enter your W-2 amount or your 1099 amount, if it's 1099 amount, you'd have a record of that. The only exception would be anything that you didn't file with your tax returns. So if it was cash under 600 that you didn't file with your tax returns, that, which they haven't necessarily addressed how to do that, that would be the only thing that would be off. Because everything else, 1099 or W-2, you'd have that number from the actual form.
Well, if I may, you know, one thing, because talking about disputes, sometimes, very often, they get it wrong. They don't have the right amount of, either because you haven't given them enough or they didn't get the right report back. The thing is, every piece of, I'm talking New York now, you will get a piece of paper and it will tell you how you dispute it and how much time you have to do so. And if you follow all that, you can correct something, because it happens all the time. But if you're outside of that time limit, then you may be out of luck.
Yeah, and I just want to chime in here as well. I mean, again, I have a very conservative view towards this stuff. Don't make a mistake. Don't do it incorrectly, and take every precaution you can possibly take to ensure that that doesn't happen. Because yes, if it's determined that you made a mistake and you weren't, you know, intentionally committing fraud, it is still a lengthy process full of paperwork and phone calls to get it corrected. And in the end, you will be docked employment benefits. They will deduct from the benefits that you're currently being paid in order to make them whole. It doesn't matter if Extreme Reach makes a mistake, nothing will happen to them, but you will suffer the consequences. And it's not worth it. How do I know? I've been through it. I made a mistake in New York, and did I go to jail? No. Was I, but they do consider it fraud even if you make a mistake. And so it is really worth it, you guys. Don't claim until you know exactly what you're claiming. That's just Phoebe Jonas's point of view.
No, it's true.
Again, in New Jersey, they call you up and they're like, we think you made a mistake. And then you talk it through and they're like, cool, bye. But still, it is just not worth it, you guys, especially right now with record numbers of people claiming unemployment. That also means record fraud. And I do believe that they will be on it.
Yeah.
So please, please, please just take the time to do it right the first time.
Backtracking is hell. So I think someone said that in our questions. It is. So try to have as much information as you can correctly, so you don't have to backtrack or correct yourself, because that will make them suspicious. I've made a mistake before, I think last year when I did it, and it was an online form where they said, hey, we noticed there's a discrepancy, and then I had to correct myself. And it just takes time. So yeah, try not to make mistakes, but if you do, you're human, but like, please know all your information beforehand.
Oh, and my friend Ruth E. Kramer pointed out, if you did not lose a job because of lack of work, they will find out. So make sure you're honest. That's all.
If you have health insurance through SAG-AFTRA, is it possible to use the earnings portion of the health insurance website to cite specific sessions income? It's a good question.
Yeah, I think we said this before. I mean, the problem with the P&H website is that it doesn't distinguish between session and residual. So you have to know by date when your sessions were, and you have to hope that you didn't receive a residual payment that has the same date. So it's a little tricky to do so, but you can do so. You just have to have a little extra information. Now, the place that will have that information is probably your agent. Should you have an agent, you can ask them to give you a printout send you a PDF of every single job you worked in 2019. You can have your commercial agent do that, and you can have your other agent do that if you have two agents. And that should have a little bit more detailed info. That's what I've had to do before.
Okay, we've got 2 more items, so nobody submit any more questions because we have 1 minute left. Oh, thanks. One more just jumped in. Oh, how can I get the link to this webinar's recording? I'll just answer that one really fast. As soon as this is done, there's also going to be one related to LA happening later today. Both of those are being recorded and will be posted online. We'll figure out the best route to do that respects privacy, et cetera, et cetera.
I answered it, Evan. I answered it. Let's keep going.
Perfect. Cool. If I could not go through on the phone last week to finish my claim, do you know if my filing for last week will be retroactively fixed? Tried calling 20 times.
Especially, as I said, with the CARES Act, the provision is it will be backdated to your last job rather than as is usual when you open the claim. So yes.
Excellent. Good, efficient answer. Does anyone know if international work can be claimed? Booked a gig in Canada, had to join Canadian Equity, but it got canceled.
I don't know, Christine. I don't know. Sorry.
So TBD or TBA.
I also don't know, but I'm going to put my email in the chat, and I'll ask a Canadian actor friend who also happens to work at the union.
And then one last thing, Christine added also, as someone who has filed for New York State unemployment in the past 18 months and works both W-2 and 1099, if working 1099s is substantial, she would highly suggest waiting, if possible, to file until the CARE Act is enacted fully and comes out with information. Backtracking is incredibly difficult from her perspective, unless they've loosened restrictions. It's a nightmare to include your 1099 income. My guess is they've probably already started loosening some restrictions. One of the biggest advantages, though, is what Buzz just said, is it's not about when you claim, it goes back to when you lost the work. So if you decide to, go now and they have loosened the restrictions so that it opened up so you can sort of update it as it comes in, great. If you have the means to wait, a little bit, and then when there's more information, file then. Just know, as Buzz said, you won't lose out on any money. It would appear.
And I'm just going to correct myself again based on real-time information I'm getting from helpful friends and members. Usually foreign income doesn't count towards a claim. Again, I'm just reporting what's being offered to me. I can't verify that, but it's from a trusted source. And then also the health site, the P&H site, apparently does actually distinguish session versus residuals. Again, not my recollection, and I'm often wrong. So that would be great news if I'm wrong, because that would be really helpful information for us all to have. So check it out yourself, and then let me know. I put my email in the chat. Phoebe, you're wrong. It does, because then we can let people know that that's a good source to get that information.
All right, it is 3:32, so I wanted to thank all of the panelists first and foremost, just who appear on my screen right now: Buzz Roddy, Sarah Seeds, Phoebe Jonas. I'm Evan Bass. Thank you guys for joining us. Hopefully this was helpful. One of the things that I think is great about our membership, about just people in general, about New Yorkers, is that we step up to support each other. And this came about from different people in the membership all over the country, sort of saying, hey, we should get some people on to try and help each other out. Our union is working very hard. I know staff is working extremely hard, but they got to focus on the key things, getting members back from overseas who are trapped there, who, you know, protecting our members, keeping track of, you know, the residual checks, everything that the more we can do to help support each other and come together and be both a source of positive facts and information, and also, you know, reach out and feel okay about asking questions when we don't know, because, you know, we can't get good answers if we don't ask those questions. Being honest, you know, as we've said on this panel, if we don't know an answer, we'll tell you this is our best information and try and get you more information. But that, you know, that's if somebody ever tells you they know it 100% for sure always, and they have no necessarily things to point exactly to a specific thing that proves that, take it with a grain of salt. But also just a reminder to keep on keeping on, keep up. I know a lot of us who are trying to organize these webinars are trying to come up with more webinars as well, of different aspects related to self-tapings and getting a better game on that, sort of how to use the time in our self-quarantine to up our game as performers. So stay tuned for that. But first and foremost, Buzz, Sarah, and Phoebe, you guys are awesome, as you guys already know.
Thank you. Stay healthy, everybody.
My email's in the chat, guys, 2 different emails. So if you have information to share or you have more questions, you can feel free to hit me up, and I'll try to get that info from the union as well as other trusted sources.
Bye, guys. Bye. Love you all.